I first came to Woodstock with Albert Grossman in 1963, in the fall of '63. It was October or November. And I knew some people up here who were ready to receive me and stay with for a few days while Albert scoured the areas for properties to buy and so forth. And I made contact with some of my dear friends, and they were also painters, writers, dreamers, world losers and world forsakers, but masters of their craft. And that I fell in love with Woodstock. Its mountains, its streams, it's absolutely exquisite, and in every way. Breathless, beautiful, big forests, deep, dark, melancholy. I built the School of the New Moon, which I'm very, very proud of. It's an octagonal building, all built with 2x6 rough-cut local lumber. And it was really magnificent. And one of my proudest efforts. The Haney House, Bob Haney and David Ballantyne put me on a job as being a framester. I can cut any compound cut known to man. I have the facility for it and a sense of it, and I know how to really cut with my circular saw. I'm very proud of the skills, you know, as well as seeing the importance of serious literature being recited. I have a library in my head, hundreds of poems. It's hard to imagine that I have hundreds of poems committed to memory, which is a rich thing that I have. It's related to the mechanical sense I have. I built a cabin for Hayward Hale Broun in 1968 on Brockman Lane, at 16 by 20 cabin. I founded it and made it and beautiful, and the building inspector loved it and so forth. And we became friends. And his wife and I acted in a play at the Playhouse, and we became closer friends, and then we put a pool table in the cabin, leveled it so his son could play pool. And
how would you describe the basic qualities of Woodstock?
Socially, I think accepting of talent, skill, some kind of vibrant skills that is applied, that is deft and beautiful in music and art, in craftsmanship, and that there's a common respect for the thing well done, which is really adapted to my basic philosophy. I am, in a sense, love to listen to classical music. I have listened to a lot of modern music over the years throughout my childhood. My father had people who wrote songs while they were working for him, became national hits. And my father, by the way, was the king of 42nd Street. I lived in the Rossoff Hotel on just east of Broadway, in the shadow of the New York Times building way back then. And so I'm a New York boy, a Times Square boy, and these are my basic roots. You know, the glitter and glamour of neon, and the rattle of chains. I have a lot of stories about Woodstock. Well, you know, it's hard to say. One of the stories I had would be to take Albert Grossman's father, who was an old man in his 80s, back to New York several times. Sunday night, Albert would ask me, "You're going to the city tonight? Would you take my dad?" He was a very sweet old man. He sat next to me and we opened up a conversation. He told me he was a tailor and he had 4 or 5 guys that worked with him, and he would go into an executive's office and measure the guy exactly for a suit, and they were very expensive suits. And he was a great craftsman, and he knew how to sew. He knew all this craftsmanship of making a beautiful, beautiful piece of work for a man of executive power, which Albert was. He had a real epic executive grip. He could power a person if he wanted to, just with the sound of his voice, deliberating, a master. But to have this beautiful, sweet friendship build up over the thing well done, which has always been my call. Because I was a good craftsman even when I was 13, or even when I was 7 years old. I was tuning the hairsprings of Big Ben alarm clocks with a metronome and tuning it exactly so that it clicked exactly for hours and hours and hours, right on the second. So that kind of precision I had. And Albert knew that and saw that with the various things I did for him in his offices. I did these beautiful things for him. And so it was a pleasure to work with him, you know, because he appreciated good stuff, as most people do. And I try to do my best when I'm making something. I met Albert Grossman in 1958. He saw me in a play at the Bleecker Street Theater. I had a minor role, but I was very present and important in the theme of the play. And I filled it out, I fleshed it out. I didn't have a lot of lines, but I fleshed out a minor part and made it into something real. And the play was called The Girl on the Via Flaminia. It had been on Broadway and in other places and so forth, and had captured the souls and hearts of many. Anyway, he sidled up to me in Figaro and said, I saw you in the play, you were very good. I said, oh, thank you, thank you. He says, my name is Albert Grossman. I said, well, my name is Dean Schambach. And he said, what do you do? I said, I'm a carpenter, and I this and that and the other thing. We talked a little bit. He said, would you come up to my office on East 55th Street? So I said, sure. And he gave me his card and put his number down on it carefully. So I met up with him there, and he said, I have a lot of, you know, business things. I want to make it nice. Sure. Take a row of filing cabinets, put a splashback up on top and trim it with mahogany or cherry or something, polish it up. Makes a row of filing cabinets glamorous, and a beautiful thing on the top where you can't throw things down the back because it has a splashback. You know what I mean? And it helps orderlize. And here and there, trim a piece of beautiful wood one way or another, made his offices glimmer. And he loved it. He loved what I did, and he respected it. And we became friends based on the thing well done. Because that's what he did. He did it well. And I did his contract room. I've had a lot of thoughts about it. The contract room is where they signed away their lives in exchange for something that was going to be very valid for them. When it was a serious contemplation. He wanted the shelves to have no supports or not visible, so I made long, thin triangles under the shelves where he could reach in and get the various contracts he needed when he had a new person. Phil Oakes, I remember him, he was a great troubadour. One day after Kennedy was killed, he wrote a song and he said, come up, I want you to hear the song I wrote. So I was with a couple of people. We went up to his place on Thompson Street near Broome, and he got in, his children were asleep. So we went in the bathroom, and he closed the door, and he got down on his knees with his guitar and sang the song, That Was the President. Excuse me, it was so gripping. People walking through the streets weeping, and they waved you away because they knew why we were crying. So excuse the charge of voltage that shocked me just now. I've got my composure back. But he wrote the song, That Was the President and That Was the Man. And all of us started to cry, including Phil. So these were events that happened. And these are the emotions of people, common people everywhere. You know, this was a unifying feeling, this terrible, strange thing. You know, I worry about things like these days with all this rampant murder and the cheapening of life. It hurts. It hurts. I come from gold. I'm the son of two of the most beautiful people that ever lived. And I say that
truthfully from the soul. And I even now, at the age of 83, I wish I could live up to their standard. I hope that I still may do something worthy of my parents, even at this late age of life, you know. So I've been here 50 years in Woodstock. I knew all the beautiful people. God Almighty, you know, you remember Warren and Winifred Huddy? They were real estate people. They owned that little complex of buildings opposite the Woodstock Playhouse, that long line of little buildings there. They owned that whole thing. Had a big estate up on Upper Broadview, where Philip Roth rented the house. I was in the cabin. We met one day, and we had a lovely exchange. And I was throwing a boomerang in the wind, and I was trying to get it to come back. And finally was able to get it close to having it come back, you know, because the wind would take it. But it was sailing beautifully. He came out of his house and with his girlfriend, and they wandered through the brush there. And he said, "Could I try that?" And I said, "Sure. Here's something else you can do by yourself." He had just written Portnoy's complaint. So his girlfriend saw the humor in that, fell over laughing. We all ended up laughing. But we had some nice little dissertations, a very illuminated man on fire. Because I knew Norman Mailer way back in Provincetown. We were arrested for fighting. Some of the people in Woodstock was what makes Woodstock Woodstock. The beautiful people that are up against her, what they're attempting to do, to make beautiful things, you know, and to make beautiful meaning, poetry and so forth. Like I ran the poetry at the Tinker Street Cafe for many years. And one night, Danny Proper, who was there with Allen Ginsberg and Bob Kaufman back in the days when the evolution of poetry exploded on the scene, which became vital to the American public. Poetry, of all things. Some of the things that these people said are part of our inner soul's motivation. And they evolved, just like the music scene here evolved. I built, Pan Copeland had a field out near Saugerties, Glasgow Turnpike, 12 acres. That's where we had the sound outs. And they put the electric pole in and put a box in, but I built the stage under which Richie Havens played. I was the carpenter to build the stage. And the little stage they had there, and they had sound people and this and that. But Mike Lang admitted as much. He knew that that was where the origin of the idea encapsulated his whole thing, and that he thought he could do it bigger here in Woodstock, but it couldn't be. And so I was, nevertheless, a huge historical event occurred based on our little work over there. It was expanded. And I left Michael Lang a photograph of Bleecker Street with a Volkswagen bus moving, and you can see it moving because it was a tenth of a second, with my grandmother's old Hawkeye with a 3 1/4 by 2 3/4 size negative, which is big. And but it was a beautiful shot, and he appreciated it. To Mike Lang, on these streets, from these clubs emerged the greatest talents in history, which is true. It showed 5 or 6 of clubs you could see that were part of the whole evolution. So anyway, I was there. I was fixing a gas line or an electric line when Bobby Dylan was tuning up to play that night at the gas light. And I'll never forget it, man. Never forget it.
If there were one thing that you could change about Woodstock now, what would that be?
Well, here's the thing. I've gone back and forth on this issue. And there was a sweetness and a kindness in an art colony. As the village gentrified, it was only natural that the evolution of movement would occur to Woodstock and other places for people to try to find a way to live and be, you know, unfettered by the obligations of days. I think some of the economic exploitation has caused a difficulty for young artists to be here. And there's not a lot you can really do because business does have a strong effect on most people's behavior. Even mine and yours is so, it's the way it is. But I think that the spirit and the philosophy behind the openness of Woodstock's cultural elite, or people who know, who really know what a real deep message is, you know, the people who know, who form culture. We all part of it in the sense of form culture and declare this or that, you know, from freedom. Now I'm a little guy, I'm 83, but I cut all my wood with a chainsaw and I split it up with a 6-pound Go Devil, right? And I do that work today. And I'm going to do some of it when I get back home. See, I have a rustic place with a wood stove, and I hang out by the wood stove. Even this morning I made it was a little cold, it was below 60, so that feels chilly when it's 80 every day. And then later, 40 feels warm, right, when it gets really cold. But we had 4 below last winter, and it was very cold, several nights, and yet I had it 80 degrees in the kitchen.
Is there a place that was here that no longer exists that you miss, and can you describe it?
Yes, there is. It was called the News Shop. And there was a lady there behind the counter named Edna, and she was everybody's grandmother or mother or father. She was a relative, and she knew everybody's name, and she knew all our foibles and troubles and woes, because you just couldn't help but talk to her, because she had this capacity to listen. She absorbed you totally and made you feel glorious to talk, to pronounce yourself in despair or whatever it might be, one way or another, and she would listen to you in a way which you would enjoy spilling your beans, you know what I mean? So the News Shop was somewhere we got our newspaper, our morning coffee, and talks with Edna. And I miss it a little bit, yeah. There were other things too that changed. Zane Zimmerman, you remember him? He knew how to slow cook a big 50-pound roast beef, slowly, till it was, every razor thin cut was so tender. It was unbelievable. He got crazy doing that, making those tender cuts and cooking it slowly, very slowly. He knew how to do it. He was famous for his roast beef sandwiches, right? And local bread that he cut was so beautifully done, right? And the bakery on the corner where there's a picture, there's a photograph around. I was looking for it here, wasn't there? It shows me, David Boyle, who is in regrettably sad times now, but he had a beautiful, elegant, positive side to him. I want to say that, David, we hope you're going to be okay, you know, because he had a good side to him in a sense, but he overwrought himself a little bit. And, you know, and like it's all about me too. I mean, I can't help it. It's the way it is. When you're an actor, you're an instrument of meaning, and I'm usually the butler. Or Edgar Rosenblum, who ran the Playhouse, was a real deep down in his bone white truth, an entrepreneur and a presenter of theater. He knew what he was doing, and it was a proud thing to be around him, because he knew any word that he said. If he said sit, you sat. He had that kind of command because he was busy with himself and knowing what he was going to do and present and postering a job. We were in cabaret after a week of rehearsal. He knew he had a winner, a big winner. So he sent these poster people down to Poughkeepsie, up and down the east side of the river and the west side of the river, all the towns, Newburgh and so forth, advertising cabaret. We had 6 standing room only, 6. And we had all the others were 3/4, 7/8 houses. Powerful, and he was so gracious and elegant. You know, Cornelia lives on, sweet, beautiful lady, Cornelia Rosenblum. I knew her father, Lowell Hartman. We fixed the roof of the Woodstock Artists Association. That's another thing. He got up on the ladder when he was 84 to get up there to help me put the roof back together. What dedication, you know, the people came out to help for nothing, right? We did it, we all did it. I put the roof on the Chamber of Commerce. It's metal, it could last 50 years if it doesn't get hit by a tree. Nothing makes me feel better than to being up on a roof or under a plumbing thing that the common people, the common weal, the general public is going to enjoy and relish. And when I put the roof on the Chamber of Commerce, I was so proud to do that, because it's going to last and be there, and that's part of my little legacy. It's small and invisible, but it's real to me, and I give thanks to myself for the various plumbing tricks I've pulled to make things happen. I am guided by my own curiosity, and I'm feeding somehow an intelligence more. Chews things up and senses them and realizes them, smells them, you know, to realize, to cognate, you know, cognition, the machinery of the mind, to me is probably the most excellent and exquisite art there is. To be able to go in there and to know something, to absorb and learn. This is like knowing how to take a piece of wood, like I did recently, and take it down from 60, 80, 100, 150 in the grades of sandpaper to go all the way to 360, inch by inch by inch, to this gloss smooth, and then to get it all of this dust off of it and to varnish it and let it dry. It is so beautiful to me to employ, you know, what my knowledge may be, and to have it going and flowing. This is it for me, for my existence. And I try to do that when I play a character in a play, subsume myself and let the character come on somewhere, somehow, some strong, you know, especially if there's a little humor involved. Know yourself, discovery of self. It's a miracle, and it's endless, the inner discovery of oneself and what one can do. I feel the thing that is searched for and found and utilized, the process of that is immaculacy, sacred, divine. You know, it experiences all the most relishable things that we love and like, you know. So this is where I get my passion from. And I thank my mother and my father for making me their first child. I equated my existence from a once proud, high-hatted existence in the 20s and 30s, where they all stood on the deck of the Normandy, which you could visit, and it was in dock, and they posed around my father and mother, who were the miraculous combination of all time. They even saw it before I was born. They celebrated it and said, "Holy smoke, look at this." So then in 1941 or so, the Normandy was brought into a pier to be refitted for a troop ship, or armaments. And somehow the welding got out of hand, and it sank over 80 degrees, almost 10 degrees from laying flat. And so this was also, my parents were breaking up, so the symbolism was very strong. And so I went to see it. I'm a kid, right? 7 years old, 8 years old. I go down to 48th Street in the river to see this huge, gigantic, beautiful, beautiful ship that was considered to be the fastest ship in the world when it was built. The most proud, elegant thing. Seeing it laying over on its side and being taken apart, welded by hundreds of tons of welding material to take it apart. And to see this as the same time the symbolism of my own family's destruction was a deep hurt, which I think has a motivating factor in my search for the ultimate, which I now think I have, because I deeply till the earth of my garden and help these flowers grow. And see, I return to this. Sorrows and troubles bring, if you handle them well, bring victory and charm and elegance to life. I'm lucky to be here. I exude enthusiasm and curiosity, and I'm willing to put my shoulder behind almost anybody and dig a ditch with the edges square and deep, you know, out of love, to do the most menial, simple things, driven by what I hope to be a noble social love, that I love people and I love my society, and that I come from people that got scattered and lost. You know, my father and mother, I saw the bus coming when I was 5, and it took them 5 years to break up and so forth, so on. But these things are formulative. They make you what you are. Can't help it. Can't help it. Most of life you can't really help. It's a great miracle, you know, and I feel rich for having looked into my being and discovered what I think is endless, beautiful intelligence. And it's all applicable to the tasks that you're doing. I held a torch in my hand last week and welded some material. And I was really feeling the elegance of that. You know, it's a humble thing, but at the same time there's an elegant touch that makes it beautiful and gracious. Don't tell anybody, but I take 100 swings a day with a golf club. I go to the driving range and I'm hitting clean, clear, perfect shots. So the point, this is my father's game. I tried it for a while. I got fairly good. I was able to play almost par golf, and every once in a while I play subpar golf. But this plays a role in my formulation, because the golf swing is a complicated mass of thought and dream and execution and volitional tug on the soul of the struggle of the talent to make this gracious move. And it's really easy when you do it right, but it's so hard to do right, but so rewarding when you do it. So these are part of the equations and the things that grip my philosophy, the challenges that I see, you know. And I accept challenges, and usually I can overcome them with cognition and thoughts and dreams and so forth. I hope not to be petulant, but I'm sure I am sometimes. I'm sure, you know. I have a lot of faults. I've been reading Tom Paine lately, and boy, oh boy, The Age of Man. I mean, The Rights of Man, The Age of Reason. What good stuff. I've met just about everybody in Woodstock in those days when I first got here who was influential in the art world, like Ken Downer, Hayward Hale Broun, David Ballantyne. These were significant intellectual people driven by excellence. Kenny Weinstein, I don't know if you knew him, but he was a wit and he was a charmer. He lived in Rosendale, but Rush Harp and I used to join him for coffee at midnight. Sunday night, every Sunday night, Rush Harp would join coffee at midnight. And we had wonderful, wonderful times. This is a rich community of intellectual wealth and sensitivity and high standards. which makes it glorious for me. When I make something really beautiful, I've been working on Tom Fletcher's house for 50 years. The former two owners, Bob Dacey and I can't remember her name, Mary Orser, also a significant person. And I've been doing re-renovating the houses for 50 years, actually. And I'm very, very proud of that work, right? It sits there, it stands there, these mahogany decks, beautiful. Rain, snow, sleet, nothing, nada. So these things I leave as a trail of broken pipes fixed by me, right? I love it. I did go to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I felt that I really excelled there and enjoyed the hell out of it. And we came to our senior year. It's a 2-year course. Senior year, I was cast as the lead in Death Takes a Holiday. And for some reason, without even trying, people thought I was awesome. The rest of the class and the faculty said, whoa, they were backed up with my presentation of Prince Serki, Death. And so they arranged to have me redo it in the senior year at the Great Sebastian's with Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontanne. They were two great actors, and I loved them. I used to go to see them in many things, because I lived on Times Square as a boy. So I went to all the plays I could see. My father and I went to all the musicals after the Second World War. Oh. So, Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontanne, they had a set that looked royal and regal, which would fit the play that I was in. And so they watched the performance. They were out in the audience to watch. We used it in an off afternoon where they didn't have a play. And so we did the play, and it was really well received. And I knew I had a place in the theater. I knew. But what has calmed me down from that thought is that the business end of show business is difficult and trying. It's complex, and it's in conflict with my spirit, which is to do a freebie, a decliner of something serious, right? I do all the great long poems, Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. So the theater has been most of my life since I'm 2 years old. I remember very distinctly living in Forest Hills at the Burn Street, Pickwick Arms Apartments, where the old tennis court was right at one end of the street, and you could see into the tennis opening from one of the apartment ends of the buildings. When I was 2 years old, I remember walking funny and making funny faces to the amusement of my parents, and I was rewarded with glorious laughter and sparkling eyes. And that was the beginning for me to be able to appreciate on a love basis, you know. And a couple of weeks ago, I do Gunga Din. That's a beautiful poem by Rudyard Kipling. And it's a rouser. It really is a narrative, but it's a sad, sweet testament to man's willingness to share shoulder to shoulder in life and death. And it's a beautiful thing. And I did it for a tight audience, and they were really stunned. And to me, to do that and be satisfied myself, that is also one of the great pleasures of life, to be satisfied with my own reading. And I gave a reading of a dear friend of mine, Dan Proper. I think I told you this. He was right there with Allen Ginsberg, Bob Kaufman, and Leroy Jones, all the top guys that beat poets. I gave a reading of one of his poems a few weeks ago, and I was so happy to read and relish this man's meanings. It made me glow inside, to be surprised and to laugh with him. And my dear friend who I visited with up until about 2 weeks before he died. And we were intensely welded by the love of excellent thought and excellent meaning. And he had every 10 minutes he'd say something profound, you know, which was relishable, you know, that he made you enjoy that meaning-making thing, which good poets can do. So many people that are already comprising the social life of Woodstock are artists. They are creative, they're writers, they're painters, they're sculptors, they already are imbued in the arts. And many people of rank and meaning decide in their peak of their life to do some kind of art. There's a lot of art in this room. Some of these paintings you could criticize, but they are evidence of the amateur love of the thing well done. And they're striving to make meaning. The pressures on me are almost enormous, and to try to translate some of my talents one way or another into a couple of bucks. And I think if you hear me do my newest version of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, I think that I could take that to Harvard, and the most effete, urbane, polished people would have respect for the craftsmanship I placed into this poem, because of thought and dreams and so forth. Focus sharply on it. And Wallace Stevens' Sunday Morning, you know that poem? It's a long narrative poem. I have it nailed, and there's a lot of real meanings that are plowed up over and over again, and they revelate with the human heart. So when I get into something like that, that makes me happy, to be swimming around in the world of meaning, right? And to doing, you know, which, by the way, I remind myself, one of the great achievements of my life happened before I even realized I was achieving anything. In 1952, I taught 15 children how to swim in water over their head. And I had a little enclosure of docks where I very shallow, a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper. Once you teach a kid how to tread water, they're almost swimming. And it's not hard, it can happen easy, because you do almost float once you relax a little bit. So, those children learned to swim in deep water, and I thought I provided, after thinking about it, what a gracious thing. I did my job and taught these children how to swim. And one of them was the daughter of Philippe Halsman, who was a photographer for the New York Life magazine. He had more covers than anybody. And he came down the dock, and his daughter was out in the deep water doing a beautiful backstroke, and she said, "Look, Dad." And he had a tear in his eye that meant that he understood this, right? And then he took a picture of me doing a backflip off the dock. But that was service. And I know that I felt a glowing feeling when I went back to my little cabin that night and slept after having taught a few children how to swim in deep water. The gift of love. True. And I still do that, you know. I share my innermost. People say I'm far too trusting. Well, that's a part of being naked. You see where you're going to go. I have flowers and I watch them closely every 10 minutes to see if they've changed. You know, that's how anxious I am about, you know, changing the world, how my flowers grow. Is that a nice thought? Damn right it is. I'm in a place where what I consider my divinity, which is the shape of a leaf, that I feel holy and sacred, and I might make meanings from this place. They gotta be a nice, sweet thing. This is my innocence deep down. I have a harsh demeanor, which I have a scowl that could scare a gorilla, but I try not to. Oh, Pan Copeland. Pan Copeland, she ran a store, and boy, she was a powerful person. She had this 12 acres out there where you turn right at Glasgow Turnpike, and Volkswagen buses showed up, people made campfires and cooked dinners, out under the stars and the moon.
Looking over here.
Beautiful.
Hold on.
Watch out for the cord.
Yep.
There may be a couple more here, so be
I
careful.
just want you looking
You want
over
me to sit
here.
here?
We're here, you can have mine.
No, I'm fine.
Let me see.
Okay, I'll stand right behind you.
I don't want his eye angle to change.
Oh,
That's the thing.
Yeah, no, sit here.
Okay, so what
It's
do
a
you say?
technical.
Yes.
So ask it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about the sound outs.
Yes.
I have a very big sentiment because I was one of the soldiers, the hard-working people that enabled Pam Copeland, who my mother worked for. They became very good friends. And I knew her son, and Ruth Drake. You know Ruth? I see her around now and then. We laugh a little bit. But Pam Copeland was a force of human volition, and she could command and make you want to do things that she inspired. And she corrected with the harsh skills of you didn't want to be punished by her, so you would do what she wanted. But she was gentle. She was decent. Anyway, she had this land, and they put an electric pole in, and they ran, I think they put 2 poles to run it in to where the stage would be. And I built a platform like I had built for the Cafe Au Go-Go, and I built the stage under Lenny Bruce's feet when he faced 250 cops from all across the country that were there to try to define obscenity. And there were 180 other people that were behind Lenny. I built this platform, we covered it with outdoor, indoor black carpeting and stapled it with a ledge and then painted it black. And it was fine, it was really good because it brought him up a little bit, about 17 inches from the ground, so he had a little more command, a little higher. The sound out, they brought in 2 telephone poles and they brought the electric in. And I helped build the stage, somebody else was doing it, but I helped build it because I was a friend of Pam and she wanted me to do something. So I helped to build the stage, and Richie Havens was one of the main players to play that night, and we were also very proud to have taken part in this. And Pam somehow was a leader. After her difficult glare that motivated one, you loved her and respected her because she was really in a positive thing. She wanted to create something real, and she did. And it was a marvelous thing she did. They had 3,000 people one night, people cooking dinner with, as I say, the Volkswagen buses, and children hovering around fireplaces. And down below on the stage that I made, Richie Haven is singing his heart out under a starry sky. Oh, it was just drooling with the meaning. And we were so happy and proud. And Pam she was grateful, and every once in a while she would smile and sparkle, but she usually was guarded. But when she smiled and sparkled, she could ignite the soul with her delighted, sparkling eyes, and her smile was a big, powerful force. And she and my mother were very close toward the end of Pam, and yeah, they were very good friends. But she was a powerhouse, and the thing about the acres that she had to sound out, it became famous. And Mike Lang admitted to me that he knew about it, and it was part of the inspiration for the Woodstock Festival. And as I said, I think earlier, I repeated it, I gave Mike Lang a beautiful photograph of Bleecker Street and so forth. But these guys are mockers, old-fashioned makers of meaning, makers of make things happen. And Howard Solomon was the same thing. When we went in there to fix the place, it was dripping wires, and it had water in the corner, and everything was just moldy and humid and dank. And we slowly fixed the drain and got it dried out and got the wires tucked up or cut off wherever they needed to be. Put up this stuff on the top, the whole sheetrock and so forth. Got a couple of guys with ladders. Sooner or later, a club was formed. and Howard was guiding it all the way. Howard and Ellie, Solomon, Shlomo, with Candace and Jason. Where are you now, Candace? Remember me? Uncle Dean.
Thank you, Dean.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm on the edge of all the time motion. I inherited it from my mother. It's perfectly justifiable, you know. And I think due to the fact that I was overly impressed by my parents, really overly impressed, it helped in a sense form a somewhat of a moral compass in me. You know, to be good, to try to be good, that's all. And be effective in what you do, that's enough, right? But to be happy is another thing. It's a little bit of a trick. But I'm happy in my garden. That's one of the things that I really love, my garden. You know. Anyway, here we go. Thank you so much.